In this video, you will find out how I got robbed with 4 other friends. And after getting some recruits, we would get inside the server. And the only person that had robbed before this was Smash King, because he was the best player there. And we were only gonna do it with 4 people instead of 5. And there, I was by far one of the worst players there. And the thing was, I was the most important player there. But first, I have to give you some context. This is Eternal Bob, and he is one of the hardest boss fights in all of Slap Battles. He takes up to an hour to complete, and he has 37,000 health. So just completing it normally would be a nightmare. But then there's me, who only plays Slap Battles for tournaments, and doesn't even know all the phases to Eternal Bob. And yeah, Eternal Bob has 4 phases. This was not part of the script. And for Eternal Bob, you need 5 gloves. But you can use 4 people. You need Bob, you need Scott's Hand, you need Reaper, you need Killstreak, and you need Tycoon. You will see why in a little bit. And I low-key forgot how to do it with only 4 people. But then after about 2.5 minutes, we would get it. And this was my first attempt in a while. But something that I do remember is that I had to get started with Tycoon immediately. At 1,000 clicks, you could get HP regen, which is really helpful. Especially with only having 4 hearts, and this boss fight takes around an hour. And remember how I said there was phases? So you would think that the first stage would be really easy, but no, it would be really hard right off the bat. We would all lose a heart, except for Smash King. And the thing was, we didn't have auto regen yet, so we would be cooked if we died right now. And we weren't even close to 1,000. We were at 20. And so far, things are looking terrible for me and my team. We didn't even make a dent into his HP bar so far. And then I would lose another heart. Just 2 more hearts gone, and then I would have been dead. Then we got really close to HP regen, and then eventually we got it. But then this is when I noticed that there was a max for Tycoon every single phase. For phase 1, we can only get to 1,000. And so now we would actually have to hit Eternal Bob now. Hitting him in the hand was definitely not the strategy, because that's the weakest point you could get to. His head is the strongest. And for later phases, that would be really useful to know. And then I got another heart because of HP regen. Once we could stop hitting him, we would just run back to our rock just to make sure we don't die. But then meteors would get inside the mix, which would just ruin our entire plan. And some of my teammates would even lose hearts because of that. But then, after a while, we would finally get to the second stage. But this is when our team started to crumble. It got a lot harder than it already was. And we started losing hearts left and right. It got to the point where it got on my last life. But then, I just accepted defeat and just decided to die. And my team already wanted to give up. But we couldn't give up. Or at least right now, because that was only our first attempt. What's the worst on just trying again? And who knows, we could probably do it this attempt. I had to get started with Tycoon immediately so we could get HP regen. When Rob was tired, Smash King would help me do Tycoon. And then Santi came, which made things a lot quicker and easier. After only 5 minutes of clicking, we would finally get HP regen. And so now it was actually time to fight Eternal Bob. But then during phase 2, our whole team, well, just me, we're starting to crumble again. And it got to the point where I was at 1 heart and I wasn't even close to regening. But then I would die. And Damien had to go because his brother snitched on him for not letting him play the game. So our 4-man team would become a 3-man team. And we cannot get Rob with only 3 people. That would be impossible. And even if we did make it into the dimension, that would be stupidly difficult. And then while doing some research on Rob while trying to find other people, this is when I noticed what we were doing was stupidly difficult. And then this is when I noticed that Eternal Bob was the hardest boss fight in all of Slap Battles. But then Damien joined back. We were going to have Leah replace his spot, but we realized Damien was a lot more better than Leo, so we had to just replace him. And while trying to do it, Damien would accidentally mess it up and we would have to redo it all over again. But then after 2.5 minutes, we would get on our third attempt. Like every single attempt so far, I would have to immediately start Tycoon, but this time everyone was helping me. People were losing hearts left and right, and that he also included me. But then this is when I said something that made everyone lock in. Hey, whoever dies next is gay. And even though that was a silly joke I said, for some reason everyone locked in now. Even me, I was locking in. Every time Eternal Bob was done throwing his attacks, everyone would just cut out safely and help me with Tycoon. And even though we barely made a dent into Eternal Bob, we all had at least a heart lost. So we would have to do Tycoon for now. But then eventually, we would get HP regen. And we would all start attacking Eternal Bob. But then Gotham would stop time while Bob was there, so we could land more hits on him while the time was frozen. And I started hitting him in the head so it could do more effect on him. And when Meteor started getting into the mix, barely anyone was affected by it. And then yeah, eventually some of us would lose hearts, yeah. But it's impossible to do this without taking a single damage. But then during phase 2, we were barely affected. I found the perfect spot so I can't get hit off the map, but I would still be fine. And in phase 2, you would have to hit these meteorites towards Eternal Bob so you could deal damage on him. And we were so close to Auto Tycoon. Once we got Auto Tycoon, we basically beat it. And then eventually we got it. And before I knew it, we were already in phase 3, which is where Killstreak and Reaper was shine. A lot of these little dummies was count as kills for Killstreak and Reaper. And the more kills that they got, like in the actual game, the more powerful they would become against Eternal Bob. And then eventually as Smash King against Killstreak, he would get 128, which would do a huge damage chunk into Eternal Bob, especially hitting him in the head. But then eventually we got Eternal Bob so weak that Rob started saying he was weak. And we would have to kill each other so we could get Rob. I unfortunately died, and that technically meant I only had 1 life left, so I was dead. But Santi was now Rob. And then Santi Universe would seal it in and do the last laugh and hit Eternal Bob while being Rob.
Words like tidal waves will sweep me off my quiet caves and drown my fireplace and tell me why